What's going on, everybody? It is conference championship week, and welcome to the SHIPIT Nation College Football Show. My name's Bill. Put a dollar in front of it. You'll find me on Discord and Twitter. And man, it's been a fantastic regular season. SHIPIT crew had a huge college football week last week. We'll get into that a little bit later in the show, but our community is just on fire lately with football in general, college football and NFL. But right now, we're still looking to hit 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. We just hit 9K, I think, earlier this week or last week. So we're getting there. We love bringing you all of these shows for free on YouTube. All we ask in return is a like and subscribe. We got some pretty big prizes planned once we get to 10K. I think we actually had a giveaway for 9K too. So if you're one of the subscribers now, you might have been in on that as well. But ever closer to 10K, and you can help us get there. And we'd love to have you part of our community here on YouTube. We're going to jump right into this conference championship slate, though. The MACtion getting involved with the big boys on Saturday. Ohio at Miami of Ohio. This game is being played indoors at a neutral site. The Red Hawks of Miami of Ohio won the regular season matchup 30-20. That score is a little bit closer than the game actually played. Miami jumped out to a huge lead in that one. But playoff time, Ohio's been on a tear lately, so really anything can happen in any of these games. I don't want to repeat myself too much, but I wouldn't be surprised if I say that again. For Ohio, Parker Navarro, just been an absolute stud almost every single game. And I say almost because Miami of Ohio held him to 88 yards and 2 picks through the air and only 38 yards on the ground. And he is a running quarterback. So there are some concerns there. But even at 8,500, he can absolutely smash. He has the rushing upside, especially even, inside the red zone and inside the 5-yard line. He has that rushing touchdown potential. So I don't mind that. And then his favorite target is by far Coleman Owen. If you watched or followed along with Ohio last week, 2 monster plays just to start the game, and he had like 20 points in the first 5 minutes of the game, it seemed like. So Owens is clear favorite target. Hendricks has been banged up, and you can kind of tell if you watch him play. Harris has basically disappeared, so not really looking there. I mean, they're cheap options, but there's not much juice in that squeeze. But again, playoff time. Man, weird stuff happens. Donovan Edwards, national championship game last year, didn't do anything and then popped off. Probably the optimal captain with a couple of touchdowns in that game last year. So teams try to get creative once they get into these higher stake games. Anthony Tyus has basically been the dude. 33 carries against Toledo a couple of weeks ago. They gave him some rest, only 13 last week. He still had 109 yards. Hunt basically picks up the slack, but McCormick has been getting a little bit more usage lately, and he's a vet, so he could definitely see the field. On the Miami of Ohio side, Brett Gabbert's never a sexy click, but at 6K, he's got 3 to 4x upside. Only thing is he's got a 1x floor. So take that for what you will. He's definitely a cheap option at quarterback if you need to go there, but he has all his friends in the wide receiver room back now. Cade McDonald is healthy, and he almost instantly got his wide receiver 1 status back last game. He had 12 targets. I think like 28 points on DK or something ridiculous like that. Javon Tracy and Reggie Virgil didn't really suffer, though. They both had high teens as well. Virgil had 10 targets of his own. It really could be any one of these 3 guys, and the prices on them are pretty enticing. We always see a lot of cheap value at wide receiver, it seems like, on these slates, and Miami of Ohio has exactly that. And then Keon Mosey, I mean, you don't necessarily click value at running back quite as often, but he's a workhorse, a $4,500 workhorse. He's got 100 yards on the ground in 7 of his last 8 games. The other one was only 91. So, I mean, he really, really slacked that game. But this Ohio team allowed 111-1 to Mosey when they played earlier this season. So the potential is definitely there. This is, despite the low total, a really stackable game. You got the expensive pieces of Ohio and Navarro and Owen. Run it back with really your choice of the litter between Mosey, these wide receivers, Gabbert, maybe even, depending on how your build goes. So I don't mind this game, and I love me some action. Iowa State at Arizona State, Big 12 championship game. This is being played in Dallas, or Arlington, I guess technically, at Jerry World. So we got to be worried about the brightness if they don't close the roof all the way. Iowa State, a 2-point dog. Rocco Becht just kind of been solid, man. He keeps putting up numbers. This is the most expensive he's been all year, but he probably deserves it, having so many games in the low to mid 20s and a couple of spike games in the 30s. Like he's been dealing. So I don't mind this price on him, especially if they are the true underdog and are going to be trailing. I don't see why not. Hansen and Sama have been the two guys. I mean, they're cheap is really it, but you're getting a split backfield, and there's so many workhorses on this slate. It's just hard. Jalen Jackson, I mean, he still exists, but really, when you're looking at Iowa State, you're looking at Higgins and Noel. Brahmer might be back. He might not be. Burkle would be the beneficiary if he's not. But, I mean, we don't need to talk much more about it. Higgins and Noel are the two primary guys for Iowa State. And speaking of primary guys in wide receiver rooms, Arizona State is without theirs. Jordan Tyson not going to play. He had 75 catches, 1,100 yards, and 10 TDs coming in. The rest of the wide receivers on the team combined only have 41 catches. That's because Chimama Taylor, the tight end, and Cam Scattaboo eat up a lot of targets as well. So Sam Levitt, I mean, he's going to have to figure it out. He can use his legs a little bit, but his favorite target is gone. So that, to me, that screams Scattaboo. I mean, whether it's in the run game or the pass game, he could have 35 to 40 touches in this game. All the marbles to get to the CFP and maybe get Tyson back. This Arizona State team's good, and they got a chip on their shoulder being picked last in the Big 12 preseason. So I wouldn't put it past him to give Scattaboo 40 touches one way or the other. Mateer is getting a lot of targets at tight end. Though Tyson ran a lot from the slot, Mateer runs a lot from the slot. So you could see, those routes that are run there going Mateer's way. But Guillory did get a slight uptick in targets. He had the touchdown after Tyson went down, or maybe it was before Tyson went down even. I don't remember for sure last week. And then this dude, Eusebio, scored a touchdown in garbage time. He's fine. Melquan Stovall got a slight uptick in usage. The one thing I will say, Troy Omie might get a little bit of an uptick in usage. He's a veteran. It's really unknown. Jake Smith is practicing again. He looks like he's on track to play. And he played in the slot some and can play wide, so kind of the same thing Tyson was doing. The problem is that Tyson went down against Arizona, and Arizona State was beating the tar out of him. So it's really hard to get a solid feel for what this rotation is going to be. So that's why I feel like, if you need a cheap receiver, Guillory and Mateer are probably the top two options here. Stovall, maybe. Eusebio, just you don't know as much about him. But that just everything leads me to clicking Scattaboo's name overall on this Arizona State side. But if you need value at wide receiver, you can find some in this Arizona State room. Georgia at Texas. Well, technically it's Georgia at Texas. They're a 3-point dog in Atlanta. That seems fair, right? An hour and a half from Georgia, hours and hours more from Austin. These two teams played earlier this year, 30-15 Georgia at Austin in the regular season. So, I mean, we do have a sample size of how this could go. It was earlier in the season, and Georgia's offensive line is completely healthy again, so that's pretty scary. Carson Beck, fair price at $8K. Don't mind it. He probably deserves to be that price. He's looked pretty good since the Ole Miss loss, but, one of the games they played was UMass. But he hasn't thrown any interceptions, which is good. If he threw an interception against UMass, I might have just put a red next to his name for injury as well. But the running back room is really what we're waiting on. ETN is questionable. Really don't know. I don't know how close he actually has been any of these weeks. That's something we're going to have to keep an eye on. Frazier's a fair price for sure. Is a little bit of a tougher matchup, but if he's going to be a workhorse, and then you got Cash Jones, who's cashed in, scoring last two games, three times in the last 4, 3 times in the last 5, something like that, but 2 straight for sure. And then these receivers, the top 3 receivers are all kind of lumped in together. They all get pretty equal looks. Lovett has just been more effective with the looks that he's getting. He's got 3 touchdowns in the last 2 games. But any one of these 3 guys could get there. I'm surprised that Lovett is still cheaper than Arian Smith, but they're confusing pricing on DraftKings sometime. We'll talk about that a lot more with Texas too. Speaking of Texas, Quintravion Wisner has just kind of been a stud lately. He's got 59 carries in the last 2 games. Granted, Blue did leave the last game early, but even the game before that, he was in the 20s. So Wisner's kind of seeming to take over that backfield. Obviously, Blue's still going to be involved. Again, let's go back to that Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards national championship last year. So the rotations I mean, any of these teams could have something in their back pocket they haven't used all season. But I like Wisner at that price. Blues, not bad. Both are involved in the pass game. The confusing pricing here for me is Gunnar Helm and Isaiah Bond. Honestly, if you look at their usage, should probably have flip-flop prices, but they kind of refuse to move either of them. Gunnar Helm played every single snap last week. Like, he played 81 out of 81 offensive snaps, and then I think had 10 or 11 more on special teams to boot. So, he's going to be on the field. Matthew Golden played 70 of 81 snaps on offense last week as well. Bond, Wingo, and Moore each played about 40, so they're kind of rotating a little bit more. So I do like the look of Helm and Golden here. The biggest problem with all of these guys is their quarterback. Quinn Ewers, on top of not being a very good quarterback, Texas hasn't been afraid to bench him. Like, Arch is getting some looks pretty much all season long. And if Texas watched that Georgia Tech game, throw Arch in for a couple of drives and let him sling it, let him run. There's opportunity there. We could see, I don't know that we'll see a 50-50 split necessarily, but part of it too could be like, Quinn isn't playing at his best, so we're going to put Arch in just to make him angry. And then he comes back in and has a solid drive or, what have you. And I don't know. It's just hard with the way these quarterbacks have been rotating this year. But I do like, looking at Helm and looking at Golden and Wisner in these rooms. And then, like I said, all of these games are stackable on a 6-game slate. They're all very, very similar. The one that's maybe the least not similar, did I say that right? That doesn't matter. Marshall, Louisiana. This one is a true road game for Marshall. They're playing at Lafayette because they do that in some of the G5 conferences. On the Marshall side is a 6-point underdog. They don't throw the ball, but Braylon Braxton's their leading runner. So at 7,100, you're probably going to give him a look. He can throw. He's just not, whatever. But he is their leading rusher. And then AJ Turner, Jordan Houston, and Ethan Payne all kind of rotate. Turner and Houston, I would say, are 1A and 1B, and they do catch out of the backfield a decent amount. Or Houston catches out of the backfield a decent amount, I guess more than the other guys. But Turner and Houston, 1A, 1B, Payne kind of rounds it out. Turner did have that massive game against Georgia State earlier this year, but, I'll take the discount on Houston if I'm looking here. Turner would get you way different in all likelihood. And then, like I said, they don't throw the ball a whole lot, so this wide receiver room it just makes it tough to click. Fitzpatrick does have 30 more targets than the next closest guy, but his catch rate is only 44%. So he only actually has 4 more receptions than Chuck Montgomery. Braylon Brown has seen a little bit of an uptick in routes, and he did start against JMU. He got a start. I don't know if it was his first start of the season, but he definitely hadn't started in a while if it wasn't. But really tough to look at these wide receivers. You're really looking at Braxton. You could play him naked in this situation. But like I said, Houston gets enough usage at that price that you could give him a look as well. Louisiana is the favorites. Marshall has given up 19 points or more in every single game except 2, and that was against Stony Brook and Southern Miss. So this 31-point team total is looking mighty juicy and very it's pretty likely that it could happen. Maybe the highest likelihood for a team to go over a 30-point total that we've seen in a while. Chandler Fields is going to start at quarterback because Ben Woolridge, he got hurt a couple of weeks ago, and coach said it would be about 4 weeks. So, doing my Minnesota math, that tells me that he's not ready yet. So we're expecting Fields to go. He does have a lot of experience. It's his 6th year at Louisiana, and he looked really good against Troy, decent enough last week. So 6,800, I don't mind clicking that. Bill Davis and Zylan Perry, Bill Davis was honestly the first one that jumped out to me when I first looked at this slate. First of all, great name. Second of all, he's got a little workhorse to him at 4,900. He had 17 carries last game. Perry had 19 carries last game. Davis has double digits in most of the games. So these two guys, you could flip a coin and pick one, and either one could get there, especially at these prices. And you can get to Marshall on the ground. They have several games they've given up 200 yards or more. And then in the wide receiver room, again, with Fields, it is going to be a different look than Woolridge, but Lance Lejeune leads the wide receiver room. He actually used to play quarterback at Maryland, and now he's at Louisiana. But he's got a consistent 7 to 9 targets the last few games, which is promising because that's when Chandler Fields took over. He's seen these consistent targets. So I don't mind that connection of 6,800 to 4,500 QB to wide receiver 1. Definitely something you want to look at here. Terrence Carter is a clear wide receiver too with a few spike games. He's a big dude, like 6'2", 240. So he probably matches up really well with a lot of these D-backs. Broussard is involved some. Jacob Bernard might be a little sneaky because he's also been at Louisiana for 6 years. So he and Fields came in together, and Bernard's a name we've heard a lot at Lafayette the past few years. So it's not like he's a nobody. But highest total, it is the biggest spread, but it's still a touchdown spread. Both of these teams with decent team totals, so a very, very stackable game as well, especially with this pricing, man. This pricing's making it easy to not necessarily play whoever you want everywhere, but pretty darn close. Clemson at SMU. Again, sorry, I say at. This game's at Charlotte. It's one of the two outdoor games. The last one was outdoors, and this one's outdoors. The rest of them are in controlled environments. Clemson, didn't even think they'd be here. If Miami had won that game against Syracuse, they wouldn't be. So they're probably going to be playing pretty loose and pretty excited. The one thing I will say about Clemson is that their offensive line is looking pretty healthy. They were down a tackle and then lost their backup after one play against Pittsburgh earlier this year, but now we got Tristan Lee and Marcus Tate back. So maybe the healthiest their offensive line has been in 6-8 weeks. Because it's Tate and Lee's second game back, that first game back, getting their feet back underneath them. And now it looks like they're good to go. And that only helps these skill players. Cade Klubnik, 9K is a little steep, but he does have the upside. We've seen it. We've seen Clemson be winning games by 3 touchdowns, and they're still slinging it out there. Almost like they're trying to get the 300-yard bonus for us degenerates on DraftKings. But Klubnik he's a fine click at 9K. Again, there's better value on the slate. There's cheaper. Obviously, he's the most expensive quarterback, but not bad at all. Tough defense, but, SMU maybe hasn't played an offense like this. I think they played Louisville, which is all right. Phil Maffa has not been himself lately. He's had just stinker after stinker the last few weeks, but again, offensive line is now healthy again. Maybe we see a better Maffa this week, but again, SMU, I guess they've only allowed more than 4 yards a carry once. And they played decent running teams, Boston College, Pittsburgh, BYU. They did play Louisville. I should just look at my own notes and maybe I could not sound like such a doofus when I say things like that. They did play Louisville, Isaac Brown, stud. So they're not playing complete slouches. But, Clemson's just historically a different animal. This wide receiver room is really juicy for Clemson. Antonio Williams, priced like the wide receiver one he is, but everybody after him is it seems like an egregious misprice. Williams did have 10 targets last week, but guess what? So did Bryant Wesco. And Wesco is he's good, man. He's really good. I think he's starting to peak in exactly the right time for Clemson. So 3,400, I don't mind that. TJ Moore had 7 targets. I actually played him last week. It helped me get Scadaboo, Brooks, and Neal in the same lineup. And it's because TJ Moore's cheap and they didn't price him up at all. He 4X'd. So I don't really know why DK priced him the way they did. One name you see on here that we haven't seen most of the season, though, is Tyler Brown. He is back at practice. Obviously a stud last year, a super good wide receiver. And he plays the slot, which is where Stellato had been playing, and now Stellato's hurt. So it'd be a perfect, just get him right back into the slot where he's comfortable without any issue. And, I think Brown's a better wide receiver than Stellato, but it doesn't really make a difference. But we could see Tyler Brown back, so watch that. But a lot of playable pieces from this Clemson side. I really like those cheap wide receivers. On the SMU side, Kevin Jennings he keeps getting disrespected week after week. He's, like I said, he's been every week, it seems like I talk about it. He's been throwing a lot very well lately. That's how he's been getting there, but he can use his legs. That's the thing. It's he can use his legs. He's run more in close games this year. I would imagine this is going to be a close game. He ran against Louisville a lot. He ran against Duke a lot. He ran more in the conference championship last week. And Lenora Sellers just torched Clemson. So I know SMU saw that film. It's not an apples to apples comparison, South Carolina and SMU, but SMU is a good football team. Brashard Smith still getting workhorse numbers, 16 carries and 3 catches on 3 targets last week. A couple of touchdowns, never hurts anything. You can run on Clemson. They've allowed more than 5 a carry 3 of the last 5 and 6 times on the season, including the Citadel, Appalachian State, and Stanford all running for more than 5 yards a carry. So Rashard Smith, 8,200 is expensive, but probably worthy of that price tag. And then this wide receiver room is the same as SMU's wide receiver room has always been. Last week it was Daniels with the target high, but it could be Smith, it could be Hudson any day. Hibner back to 5 catches for 48 and a tutty. Moochie Dixon is involved enough that 3,300, whatever. My favorite is Derek McFall, though. Not my favorite play. I need to make that clear. But last week he got 6 offensive snaps. He had 2 carries and caught all 3 of his targets, and he got a touchdown. So maybe the most efficient player on the team, Derek McFall. But this, like, again, this is a very stackable game as well. Like all of them are. So any which way you play it, just, if you stack it and want to get different, Klubnik's probably the way to do it. So again, a very high total with a tighter spread. These 2 games are the 2 highest totals on the slate. So definitely eyes on those 2. This should be a good football game. Penn State and Oregon playing in Indianapolis, another indoor game. Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year, Dylan Gabriel, against the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, Abdul Carter. The immovable, unstoppable force versus the immovable object. Which one wins? Gravity is the answer, by the way. Penn State side, Nick Singleton has kind of retaken that running back 1 role that he had previously, like a 1A, 1B. But lately, it's been Singleton with the clear RB1. He's got about twice as many snaps as Allen in the last 2 games. But again, Allen could still get looks. He's still involved enough that, $1,200 discount ain't nothing, Bob. There's just, there's better workhorses on the slate that we've already talked about. And the Singleton is still getting targets too. He's caught all of his targets in the last 3 games, and he's caught 33 receptions on 35 targets all year. So very effective in the passing game as well. So that's why, that's what you're getting for the 1,200 is more snaps and more targets. Tyler Warren's still the top option for Penn State. It's not even close. He just touches the ball in so many different ways, and he's very, very effective. And he's a good football player. And then Harrison Wallace. The thing with Wallace is that he didn't play. I mean, he didn't play last week, but they didn't need him. First of all, second of all, you heard his name a lot against Minnesota when I was listening to the game, and I went and looked. And like, oh, he does have a solid target share. So 3,800 is definitely too cheap for him, in my opinion. So that's a name I'm going to be looking at too. So even though, again, Penn State, not the greatest fantasy team at all, because like Drew Aller is just like maybe the most meh quarterback in college football, especially when it comes to DFS. But definitely looking at a couple of pieces from this Penn State side, especially on a 6-game slate. On a 12 game, I'd probably ignore this a little bit more other than Warren, but got a 6-gamer. On the Oregon side, guys are priced. Some of them are priced where they should be. Like Dylan Gabriel, fair price at 8,600. Tough matchup, but he's had a solid string of games, undefeated, offensive player of the year. So like, obviously he's a good football player. Like, I don't know. It's tough to say Penn State's really a scary defense because who have they played outside of Ohio State? I mean, they played Illinois, USC, Minnesota. Oregon. I could see Penn State winning this game. I could see Oregon winning by 3 scores. I lean on the 3-score side for Oregon, but you never know. Jordan James been solid all year. Just missed a 100-yard bonus by a yard last week, but he got a couple of scores. I do like that he's one of those guys that will get you down the field and they'll leave him in to get the goal line score. There are plenty of teams in college football that put in a goal line back at the 1 after the other guy gets you all the way down there and you're tilting because he didn't get the extra 6 points. 6.1 points. Don't forget that 0.1. Whittington will still get work, and he's cheap enough you can sprinkle him in, but James is the guy. And then Tez Johnson was back last week. He only had 3 targets, but I got to imagine he's probably due for an increase there. Terrence Ferguson has been pretty steady, definitely too cheap at 3,100. Definitely, like he's not the top option or anything. And then Evan Stewart is he's had a couple of big games, but you never really know exactly when it's going to come. Trayshawn Holden, kind of the same thing. Gary Bryant played quite a bit a few weeks ago, but last week he only had 4 snaps on special teams, so I'm not sure what's going on there. That's a name that kind of keeps getting brought up in the DFS and college football community that, at least when we're talking Oregon, just really don't know. But you're looking at James, you're looking probably at Ferguson a little bit more than Tez just because of the savings. But I mean, if you like, there's no reason you can't play Tyler Warren and Tez Johnson, against each other in a lineup. They're both absolute studs. That's it for the 6 games. If you like this stone, but you think it could use a little bit more color, well, we have one of those too. This is the stone for college football that, will give you the matchup. It'll give you the players and pricing like I just did. But then it also tells you what's the game environment like, what's the pass defense and the rush defense of each team, what is their pace, what is their run pass percentage, and it's production, not how often they run versus how often they pass. It's what yardage they get, where the production comes from, because that's what we care about in DFS. And then targets and rushing attempts, and obviously the spreads and totals and even game times, so you can have everything right in front of you for late swap. We want to provide as much relevant information as we possibly can to help you with your process, but keep it all on one page so you can have everything in front of you all at once. And the place to get that colored stone is SHIPIT Nation, the best in college football DFS and in DFS in general, my opinion, and I mean the opinion of a lot of others too. But and the thing about SHIPIT is that we want to provide value. We want to provide you with education. We want you to be able to pay for your contests, not your content. So that's why for an entire year of every single sport that we cover, it's only $700. So, I mean, it's well under $100 a month. You're getting a discount from the monthly. If you go up to 6 months, a discount from the 6 month. If you go up to annual, like the typical subscription structure. But look at all the sports that we cover: NFL, CFB, PGA. I've been in on some of those PGA meetings, and there are some big things planned for 2025. We're doing everything that we can to ensure that we provide you with the best, not just the best value, but the best product on the market for PGA DFS. NBA, NHL going strong. MMA still in full swing. NASCAR is going to be starting up with the Daytona here in a couple of months. Like it just gives you everything that you need to know. We do projections. The Discord is the best Discord out there. We talk process, we educate, throw ideas off of each other. We learn a lot about each other and maybe find things in our process that we missed before that could help us become better DFS players, because that's the ultimate goal. Yes, we do provide cores, and player notes and things of that nature. But I'll be honest with you, my picks are not any better than your picks, and his picks are not any better than mine. That's just how it goes. Our cores are meant to provide starting points to get you thinking about guys. It's our process led us to those cores. And then it just starts you thinking, oh, why did they go to those guys? And then you start looking into it and like, oh, I could see how they get there, but it doesn't fit my build quite as much. So I'm going to take 2 of these guys instead of all 4 or 5 or 6. But that's the thing, is that we just want to help with process. It's single sport too. If we do football and PGA right now, we're running a deal for football. We slashed our prices, so it's only $100 for the rest of the season. You get college football and NFL, so that means you get the entirety of the bowl season if you sign up right now. As long as you'll get all of the conference championship games depending on when you sign up. I guess they could be going on Friday night right now, but it's only $100. You get NFL playoffs and the rest of the regular season, obviously, plus the Super Bowl. Bowl season, college football playoff. We got some big things, like we're doing stones. We're changing the rules for our stone for the college football playoff slates that we get. And we also have an optimizer that you can get for NFL. So like I said, golf coming up in just a couple of months. We got big things planned. So if you just want the one sports, we have those options for you too. And why would you join SHIPIT Nation? Oh, because it's the best value. Yes, but because we win too. We had a $100,000 winner last week. We took college football. I said earlier, we had a good week last week. It's because we took down the flagship on DraftKings on Friday and Saturday night. Boy, LSU Nick and P. Duran going back-to-back days. And Nick deserved it. He had a stat correction that prevented him from winning a couple of weeks ago. So that was just karma. Our man, the Degenerate 75, just continues his heater in the NFL. And just so many different winners. That's the one thing you notice. Look at all the different names. And this is just last week. It's just last week. So it's not the entire season. It's not the entire month of November, anything like that. And I can't even fit all of them on the collage either. So it's awesome. It's not just that it's like I said, it's because we educate, we talk about process, and everybody wants to get better. And that's our goal every single day when we have our discussions and we provide the content. So we can see it's paying off, and we want you to be a part of it with us all the way to the moon. But never forget rule number 1. College football is fun. enjoy that process, enjoy building your lineups, enjoy back-to-back days of conference football, conference championship football, and just be glad that we have the opportunity to play daily fantasy sports while we watch these games. Hopefully we can meet at the top of the leaderboards this weekend. But until then, we'll see you next time.